advice would be, don't think you know everything. I think part of what happens is that people who come from a formal educational setting feel like they've read all these books, got these degrees, and they have the answers. And my personal belief is that you are an expert about what happens in your neighborhood, regardless of what degree you have. So just sort of respecting that, especially if you're considering the environmental justice realm, go into it completely open-minded, open-hearted, and don't assume that you know everything, because we always have so much to learn.
We call that in our meetings, we encourage everybody, including the facilitators, to enter as a learner. Because often somebody walks in the room and talks at everybody like they know something brand new and everybody else in the room might already know it. I think my advice to you would be, as you've seen, we don't represent all of the ways that people could work on environmental justice at all, but we represent 3 different ways. Ways that collaborate sometimes and a lot of times, but if you really want to do environmental justice work, give yourself the time to figure out which kind, or like from which approach, or using which skills, because there are a lot of options and there are probably a lot more than you can imagine.
You're all going to end up in different walks of life, working in different institutional settings and so forth, and you can always help bring about change in whatever institutional setting that you find yourself. And don't think about doing environmental justice as just something you do with an organization that's established, that's self-described as environmental justice. You should do that because that's how change is brought about, by people coming together collectively and sharing a voice and vision. But you can also bring about change in your workplace, or in your own neighborhood, or with your groups of friends, in what you study, your course of life, and that's part of the process of empowerment and helping to empower others. So you can bring about change in many different ways and never cut those opportunities off when they present themselves.
So our work is clearly about both of those things, which I think I started to touch on when I was speaking earlier, but I'll give you an example of a campaign that's been going on in Chelsea and East Boston. So Chelsea and East Boston are 2 communities not far from here where it's an industrial hub. So along the Chelsea Creek, that is a designated port area. There's big industry located on the shoreline. There's very few parks in those communities, so there's all this waterfront without resident access to it. A lot of polluting facilities, you've got auto mechanic repair shops, a lot of leaking, bad stuff going on with that. So we've been supporting groups as ACE for more than a decade in both of those neighborhoods. And we've succeeded in getting a couple of new parks, cleaning up some of the brownfield sites or the sites with contamination on them. And every time we sort of get an environmental good, it seems like there's another proposal for something bad. So I say it happens concurrently, and the campaigns that we do at ACE are very local. So there's often sort of an environmental bad and an environmental good campaign happening at the same time, or multiple at the same time.
So I can say that most of the work of Better Future Project and the work that a lot of us together did before that's what we were called, has been about trying to get in the way and disrupt the bad. And we think that, so we've recognized that it's been the easiest way for us to bring together the people that we've been able to bring together around a common set of goals. And people always will show up at our meetings. So our 350 Massachusetts network has meetings, regular meetings in different places throughout the state. If you want to go to one, you can go to 350ma.org and check out the calendar. There's one every other week in Cambridge, and there's about twice a month in Boston. People always come to the meetings and say, why don't you have a group working to make something positive happen? And the interesting thing that we found is that the people who come to the work that we're doing with ideas for, let's support Cape Wind, let's support, a grassroots solar initiative, nobody wants to work on anybody else's idea for solutions. But it's been, so we've never been able yet to really catalyze a group around one solution. And so we do a lot of telling people, go work with ACE on the transit justice campaign if they want to work on transit. Nobody else in our group, or not enough people, have wanted to work on transit, for example. And so I think part of that is just the constituency that we work with, and I don't know, part of it is that it seems to be easier to fight against something that seems scary, but we recognize that the work that we do doesn't matter if there aren't also people who found ways to work very deliberately for really positive changes that need to happen.
But unless you go to the root causes, you're never going to end that cycle. And similarly, you can fight for restorative justice. You want to begin to repair these communities, which is absolutely essential. But you also need a more transformative type of environmental politics around a transformation of the way in which the economy is organized, sort of more of a productive justice, environmental justice politics. So that's conversion to a clean economy, renewable economy. It's about detoxifying. So I think some of these coalitions are becoming possible now, and I think environmental justice, notions of social justice have to be at the center of it. I think what's kind of interesting is in Massachusetts, there are all these types of experiments now, these new coalitions. Northeastern has a big initiative around urban sustainability, and it's a big part of the mantra here. There's a lot of research showing, and this is one of the contradictions, that unless you have sort of a social justice framework, urban sustainability initiatives can be contradictory, because in many communities, lower income communities or communities of color, we've been leading efforts to clean up those communities and rid them of these environmental hazards. They become more desirable. They become a place that a lot of people would like to live. And the housing values go up, the property values go up, the rents go up, and many of the people who lead the charge for 10 or 15 years to clean up the communities can run the danger of being displaced economically, because they can no longer afford to live there once it becomes desirable. This is what's happening in Brooklyn on a major scale. So unless you look at urban sustainability in terms of affordability issues like housing, housing policy, rent policy, and taxation, then you may end up unintentionally creating new sets of problems for the residents of those communities. So we need a more holistic vision, and that's sort of what the EJ frame brings to bear if we want to invent a more transformative environmental politics.
So I would say in terms of our coalition work, it's very dependent on the issue at hand. So one of the things that we've been working on as the Massachusetts Environmental Justice Alliance for the last couple of years is we've been trying to get Governor Patrick to sign an executive order on environmental justice. And we've been in negotiations for the last couple of months with them. And I brought some postcards here with me today, and I'd love for all of you, if you support an executive order on environmental justice, I'd love for you to sign this postcard and leave it with me. We're collecting a massive stack so that we can go do a nice demonstration and hopefully be supportive of the governor, since it looks like he's looking to sign this. This is the year that's the 20th anniversary of President Clinton signing a federal executive order on environmental justice, which arguably hasn't sort of been good enough. So success for this particular alliance would be getting the governor to, sign this executive order into law this year before he leaves office. In some of our other coalitional work, I think we have these lofty missions, so with our T-Riders Union and some of our transit coalitions, we want to eradicate transit injustice. We want to make sure that everyone in low-income communities and communities of color can afford access to transportation. That is not going to be done anytime soon, I think. So success, sometimes success is we got a better route for the bus route 44, and sometimes it's we prevented that fare hike or we reduced the fare hike. I think it really depends on what's going on, but clearly our work to get toward ACE's mission, and I think the mission of the EJ movement, which is really eradicating this environmental racism. It's again having these big facilities target these low-income communities and communities of color, and that's going to take a while.
So we're at a point in our work where we've committed to making sure that whenever we set a particular campaign goal, so a particular outcome, we're working to try to get the state pension fund divested from fossil fuels, for example. That's a very clear, measurable goal. We'll know whether we hit it or not. But whether or not we hit it in this legislative session, we also have a set of movement-building goals that stand alongside that particular campaign goal, which means that we've set for ourselves intermediate goals for, how many leadership teams in different communities have we developed for people to work on this, who can begin to work fairly autonomously in communication with one another, so that our staff begins by really supporting the work of those volunteers who feel like they don't really know what they're doing. Most of them know most of what they should be doing, and a lot of the work is helping them to understand that they already have a lot of these skills, and to give them the confidence they need to get started and to get organized, and then help them stay in touch and to provide some coaching. So bringing more and more people into positions of leadership so they feel like this is their movement, and they're really and really making sure that we've got people thinking like a movement so we can act like a movement. So we're trying to think strategically instead of just like something happens and you get mad so you're gonna have an action. We do a lot of direct action work, but we try really hard to make sure that all of it happens within some sort of strategically planned campaign so that we can use each opportunity for that kind of engagement to build more power, which in our case just means power usually means something about the number of people who are involved and the depth to which they're involved and motivated to take on leadership. Our definition of leadership is generally the one in which a leader is a person who takes responsibility for empowering others to take action in the face of uncertainty. You don't need a leader when you don't have uncertainty, right? You need a manager, but we face a lot of uncertainty, and the more people that we can help to bring into the work and feel confident that we can make change, the more engagement we're going to have. Having said all that, most of our work does kind of operate in this realm of bringing people into very sometimes unachievable goals in a way that I think, I hope will eventually provides like political power and support and political will to the much more specific work that both Professor Faber and Stacy do. But it's bringing more people more actively and in a more dedicated way into committing themselves to that work.
Yeah, I think real quickly, what's really interesting here on campus is that so many of our students have been involved in these types of initiatives already. Slow food, if you look at Husky Environmental Action Team, which raised $1,000 for ACE and has been leading the divestiture movement here on campus with regard to fossil fuel investments by the university. Sometimes these are long-term goals and strategies, but they have a purpose of bringing awareness and bringing people into the organization, and they serve a movement building strategy. And you learn so much about the issues by engaging in these battles, and may not be resolved, and many of the students in this room are gone. Hopefully wouldn't, but nevertheless, that sometimes these battles that take many years to resolve serve a very important purpose, which is to help educate people, get people involved, and have them become part of something bigger than just themselves.
It's really the people. It's the family. The EJ movement is in a way like a family. Certainly the ACE community feels like a family. And there are some really hard days. And I can't tell you how frustrating it is to have won a campaign and then the next day you hear about another, huge proposal by, the next oil company or whatever it is, and that it's just like, once you feel like you've won, you've got to turn around and fight all over again, and you have to stop working on those environmental goods because you're, focused on fighting the bads. And that makes it hard, but I have to say, if you come to an ACE gathering, I think you would sort of see what I mean. It's the people that totally keep me motivated, and I feel like this is what the work is all about. It's about making sure that everyone has a say in what happens in their neighborhood and has the tools that they need to advocate on their own behalf and not have to go through, somebody else.
I'd say for me, so I made a decision about 6 years ago not to have children, because I felt like I felt really called to just keep working on climate change. I also left a doctoral program at the School of Theology at BU in ecological ethics because I didn't feel like it was ethical to do any more work in that program when I was working full-time as an organizer, at that point as a volunteer organizer. But I made the choice about children not because I don't think you should bring children into this world at this point in history, but because I felt like some of us are gonna need to just focus all of our energy on, we have a short window of time with climate change to really head off the sort of worst things that are in the pipeline, or to prevent some really serious tipping points. And I think for me, the motivation every day is just the idea of, okay, no matter how hard this is, or like no matter how much it sucks today, or no matter how much we lose, I know I couldn't live with myself if I wasn't trying. The option is try or don't try, and don't try is really scary and depressing, and I would hate myself. So.
Well, mine is very different, actually. I love people, I love nature, I love being out and experiencing it, and I want to preserve it. And I love my kids very deeply, so I'm going to leave them a healthy planet for them and their kids that follow them. So they're my motivation.
I have. It's amazing, just a couple of years out of law school, how many people I know who work in places where it's helpful to have an inside person. And I'd say even somebody who works for industry, for example, if I went to school with them, I'm happy to call them up and say, look, we know each other from school, I have some questions, or could you help get me information, or whatever it is. So I think it's enormously important to be building relationships in school and keeping relationships, and I've certainly been able to do that through the Northeastern community. And I don't think our connection, ACE gets a lot of support from faculty members here and other students. I wouldn't say that's because I graduated from here at all, but certainly there's just a lot of like-minded people at Northeastern, and so I encourage you to seek those people out, and
We
because I
have
think
two
those.
Northeastern alumni on the board.
Yeah.
Jenny and Nina.
I was trying to think if there's yeah. So, and also serving on the board of ACE or other organizations, I think that's another way to get involved with organizations. But yes, I definitely think my time here has helped with making connections that I use on a weekly basis, I would say.
Well, everyone should feel free to come speak to me or other faculty members who are involved in this. The Husky Environmental Action Team does a lot of great work. If you want to become involved with them, you have your idea, take it to them. How many guys you get to your meetings now? It's like 40 to 50 people per meeting. So there's a lot of energy around that. People are coming to the organization with ideas all the time. There are other student organizations. So either put it in action through knee-jerk or heat or slow food, or start your own organization or get involved in community organizations. But don't stand on the sidelines. Put your ideas into action.
I agree. I think that the thing that we say is jump in and pick the thing that you wanna test and give it a shot. I coach volleyball as my stress reliever. My girls think that's funny, but just like volleyball, organizing is a game of mistakes. You're gonna make a lot of them, and the important thing is what you do when you make a mistake. Do you learn from it and move on and build on it? It's okay to make mistakes in this work as long as you're willing to own up to them, say I'm sorry when that's necessary, and learn from it so that you can try again and do better the next time, and then make a mistake and start over.
And I would just say, bring your big ideas to action through internships. I think what's so great about Northeastern is the co-op program. If you're not sure that you like a certain field or like a certain organization or company, go spend a couple of weeks full-time. I think that's the best way to sort of narrow down your focus, get some input, and understand how things work in the real world. And you can also volunteer. Again, I think there's plenty of opportunities to get connected with Knee Jerk or Better Future Project or ACE and lots of other places, so get involved.